Webinars are like online classrooms. They're led by a speaker or panel of experts on a specific educational topic. Sometimes they're live, allowing for questions and real-time participation. Other times, they're recorded, allowing for snack breaks. Since webinars are 100% online, viewers can attend from home in their PJs, or from pretty much anywhere with an internet connection. They're easy to access and also easy to produce. Besides organizing the speaker and subject material, you'll need a computer, webcam, microphone, and webinar hosting software. Webinars are high-value pieces of content that are perfect for lead generation. You can gate your webinars or use Vidyard to find out who's watching and assign a lead score based on how long they stay engaged. Display your webinars in one convenient hub so people can easily find them. Broadcast live from a central landing page and interact with viewers through a chat function. Then, be sure to post the recorded version for on-demand viewing and chop up some clips for social media.
Hey, I'm Blake Smith, the creative director here at Vidyard, and to my left is
Matthew King. I'm the video production manager at Vidyard.
So you just learned about what webinar videos are, and today we're gonna break down a webinar video. No, we're really not. Today's episode is gonna be a little different because you can't really break down and commentate a webinar, just given the context of what it is. It's really just a screen recording of essentially a slide deck with a presenter on a webcam. Now, there has been times where people have made more polished ones, but majority of the time, it's going to be something along those lines. So there isn't really much, I guess, production value or anything or strategy that goes into making a webinar. It's more so just about the quality of content that you're getting out of it. And also they can range in length, being from anywhere from, well, we've seen some, a Web of 9 by Jay Bear, which is 9 minutes, but they can range all the way up to something to be like an hour. And we don't want to really sit here for an hour breaking down a slide presentation. So we're going to go about a little bit differently, and we're going to just go over a few things that we feel are good takeaways when it comes to creating webinars, but also promoting them and repurposing them. So that being said, I guess we'll do our staple of diving in. So we did a little, it's kind of meta, but we did our own little, I guess, webinar, our own slide presentation here.
That's right.
So the first slide that we have up right now is, we're going to be looking at different styles of webinars. So the first example that we have here is by Andrew Davis. He did a webinar called Creating Sales Videos That Pique Curiosity and Inspire Action. Andrew Davis is a very smart man, and he has a very awesome on-screen presence. He's very engaging, he's very energetic, and he's very knowledgeable too. So anyways, with this style of webinar, he is doing essentially a presenter and slides. So in this situation, you see the slides that he's presenting, but you also see him on camera.
That's right.
So in this one, he's essentially just breaking down how, you know, I took notes here. So it's essentially him. It's him, he's learned to transform company scripts and email templates and transforming them into something that's more engaging and authentic. And he talks about a bunch of different ways. It's really good, and if you have an opportunity to check it out, I would definitely recommend it. So that's one of the 3 styles that we have here.
Yeah, at the end of the day, I mean, obviously the base point of a webinar is to be like kind of like a brain dump, right? So you're basically getting like somebody's knowledge and they're sharing it with you. And you're there to obviously soak in the visuals, but more so kind of like do your part to take notes and kind of like hold on to the information that seems kind of like pertinent to you and whatever you're looking to kind of absorb from it. And obviously Andrew Davis does a great job in this webinar. So like you said, definitely check it out. It's pretty awesome.
We're going to look at our second example. And this one, I guess you could call it a conversational style, or you can call it a panel. So the example that we have here is from the webinar, How to Get Your Buyers to Engage. So this one had 4 people, so a panel, I guess. I don't know what qualifies a panel.
I'd say this is a panel. Yeah, I'd say this is a good panel.
But this one is basically just that. It's just the webcam, the talking head, and just whoever it be, they are talking amongst themselves and sharing their knowledge and just having a conversation about said topic. That's right. So this webinar was essentially about them discussing about how businesses want to be heard when selling to customers and prospects and such. Yeah. So it's a mix of marketers and sales here. So you get, you know, a talk track from both realms. That's right. And perspectives from that. So this one has Shika, Trish Patuzzi, Anthony, and Peter.
Yeah, the beauty of this kind of style of webinar is that you're getting somebody's kind of unfiltered opinion about a topic. So typically, you'll have the individual who's kind of moderating the discussion to a certain degree, who's going to be kind of posing the questions, and then from there, letting the group, the rest of the panel, kind of go over their response to that, which is great because, again, it feels a little less filtered through and a little bit more real to, you know, getting somebody's off-the-cuff kind of answer, which is great because sometimes that's where, like, the best little nuggets of information come out, you know what I mean? Because sometimes people forget things or whatever, but at times it's like, it's nice to just hear somebody kind of be kind of live and in the moment when answering a question, because you never know what kind of anecdote they might be able to kind of like pull on in that exact moment in time when posed with that question in that exact moment. So it's a really cool kind of funky way of doing things. And sometimes you have contrary opinions and things like that too, which is what makes the panel discussion style kind of fun. So yeah, it's a great way to go about a webinar.
So what kind of crossed my mind with this style of webinar is, and I'm going to ask you this, do you think there's a difference between, say, doing a webinar where it's conversational amongst, you know, different thought leaders or whoever, people in certain roles? Yep. Do you see any difference between this and a podcast?
I think the procedure and the way in which somebody goes about absorbing the content is different. A podcast is somewhat passive in terms of like the way that somebody watches it, whereas I feel like a webinar, first off, like typically with webinars, somebody signed up for it, so they're instantly they're already a little bit more, I feel like, engaged than what somebody would be when in terms of absorbing a podcast would be. But outside of that, I feel like there's some similarities in terms of somebody being the host or moderator and then throwing out topics and discussions for people to kind of bat back and forth kind of thing over a net, so to speak. But I feel like a webinar style is a little bit more open to having more people in a panel discussion versus a large podcast grouping. You know what I mean?
But with the conversation style and the panel, like there isn't going to be slides to be seen. Right? So I'm just seeing more parallels with that because it is that conversation style and you're hearing, and you know, with podcasts, it's generally people sharing their knowledge or, well, depending what podcast you're listening to, obviously.
Yeah, the thing with a podcast is that like typically a lot of podcasts have a theme or like an overarching kind of goal, right?
Episodic.
Yeah, exactly, episode by episode, whereas a webinar can be like kind of a one-off, right? Yeah. So it's effectively kind of almost like a one-off podcast. I can see what you're saying from that perspective. But yeah, either way, you're kind of getting quality information in a quick kind of like anywhere from 20 minutes to 1 hour kind of blip in time. So again, whether or not you're getting kind of similar answers or contrary answers, I think both are pretty valuable within this format, which is great versus hearing it from just one source alone.
Yeah.
So
yeah. So our third example in terms of styles of webinars is essentially just slides only. There's nothing wrong with this because you're still getting the content across through the PowerPoint presentation and the audio is still there. But I guess, in my opinion, it just comes off a little bit more visually dry. You're not seeing the individual, you're not making that connection. There's that loss of that human connection because you're not seeing that individual present. And it may not seem like a big deal, but at the end of the day, it's just that extra touch. And sure, you know, in the situation where maybe someone is a little bit more camera shy, I guess, this is the route to go. Because like I said earlier, it's more so about the quality of the content, and whether they're on camera or not, the content is still being delivered. It's just that having someone on camera versus slides only just gives it that extra touch of engagement and the humanizing aspect of it.
I think this is something that sometimes people still struggle with, is the idea that even to this day, I mean, I remember hearing it in high school, is like use slides as kind of like a guiding kind of path, but don't necessarily refer to your slides constantly as the direct narrative for what you want to share. So either way, whether or not you're on camera or not, within your presentation in a webinar, use the slides as kind of like a touch point or a bullet point for a larger discussion that you're going to share live in that moment. Because if somebody can just look at your slide and just kind of absorb all of that information, then why do you even need to be really talking, right? So you're there really to give greater, further context to what that bullet point should be on that slide. So really it's kind of like use that slide as kind of like a reminder as to the larger discussion that you want to have when sharing your topic. So don't, put large sentences on it or anything like that. Just use it as kind of like an interest piquer more than anything.
So the next thing we want to talk about are different ways that you can deliver a webinar. So the three things that we have here are, one is live. So it's pretty straightforward. You're going live with it. You set a time, then your audience comes and they sign in, and
Anything could happen.
And yeah, anything can happen. So obviously that's the risk. Whatever hiccups that happen, your mic cuts out or anything like that. Wi-Fi drops. That will impact that. So it does have that risk, but I guess with the live aspect of it, it does kind of have that sense of urgency of like you need to come and experience this because it is live.
One time only.
One time only, yeah. So that's live. The other approach is what we would call a semi-live.
That's right. Yeah.
So semi-live, pretty much the same thing, but rather than going into it fully live, you pretty much pre-record your webinar, and then you set a date or a time that it's going to be broadcasted, it's going to be aired, it's going to be live, but you do minimize that risk factor as the piece is already made. So you're not going to have that concern of audio being cut out or anything like that, because that's something that's a little bit more in your control. Now, still going with that semi-live aspect of it, there could still be some other technical aspects that impact it, but the risk is definitely smaller.
Yeah, the only challenge with semi-live is that it's a more difficult setup for being able to go from your presentation to live Q&A. So that's a little bit reduced in terms of being able to directly answer somebody on the fly on video or through audio in that moment versus just like the chat window. Whereas live, when you go into your Q&A session, you're answering live, obviously, and on the fly. So semi-live kind of like gets you one layer removed from your audience, so to speak. But again, like you said, it is a safety net from any technical or presentation blips that can happen. So yeah.
And then lastly, we have on demand. So that's pretty straightforward. Now, this could be a step that you take when, say, your live webinar or even your semi-live version that you pre-made and then broadcasted it. The on-demand approach just allows you to give it to your audience and they can sign up for it and view it whenever they'd like in their terms, whether they want to do it in their pajamas at home or prepping dinner and they have it on their laptop or their iPad. And they just really want to consume that information, but just didn't have the time to get around to doing it or viewing it. Sorry.
Yeah, I would argue that with on demand, you are opening up the channel to anybody viewing it at any time, which is awesome for your content and being able to kind of gather information on who's watching and when. But you are reducing the live chat feature once again. So I find with live or even semi-live, you are going to have a decent amount of kind of back and forth again for that Q&A. So it depends on how important that question and answer period is important to your presentation. If it is important, I would probably steer away a little bit more from on-demand because I find that people are a little less likely to respond and follow up after the fact via email through on-demand than they are through a live or semi-live presentation, so to speak. So I would keep that in mind, particularly when it comes to how important that side of the presentation is to you in terms of engaging with the audience.
So now we're looking at a slide that essentially talks about promoting a webinar. Obviously, you want to get people to view your webinar, whether it's live or on demand. You obviously have to get it out there into the world so people can get it in front of their eyes. So we're actually going to watch a video by Zach Basner from Impact, and he partnered with Andre Van den
Assem.
I apologize for
messing up the last name.
Yeah, but anyways, he's from Whipster, and so they partnered together to do this webinar, but they also partnered to produce a video to promote said webinar. So that being said, we're just going to watch it, and then you can see for yourself. But this is a great way to promote your webinar and get it out there in front of people's eyes to build that hype and just drive more traffic to view your webinar. So that being said,
action. Calling all marketers. This is the year to insource your video production.
That's right. Relying solely on an agency isn't going to cut it to produce all the video you need in 2019. And the only way you can start producing multiple videos per week that are authentic and affordable is to bring video production in-house. And we're going to show you how.
Don't miss this exclusive webinar where we're going to talk about how to insource your video, as well as a proven video framework that's going to help you determine what kind of videos to make and how to make them, regardless of your company's size or budget.
I'm Andre from Whipster. We help thousands of businesses just like yours streamline and scale their video production workflow.
And I'm Zach from Impact, the digital marketing and sales agency that helps you become the most trusted voice in your industry using video.
So take control of your video marketing strategy in 2019 and register now.
See you soon.
yeah. So it's nothing crazy. It wasn't a bad video, but I wouldn't say it was anything like
Hyper technical.
Yeah, it was just the two presenters that you would see in the webinar presenting the information and them doing the walking and talking. It's a little bit more dynamic than just having the straightforward talking head not moving and then cutting back and forth. They did have the text on screen to highlight the talking points and things that you'd learn from this. So it really did a great job to get you aware of who these individuals are and also what you're going to get from it.
Yeah, I'd sign up.
I also like the fact when he said Zach from Impact.
Yeah.
It just had that nice little rhyme to it.
Oh yeah.
Just because of that, I would sign up.
It's your rap background coming
It's
out.
my rap background, yeah. 'Cause I'm a professional rapper.
That's right.
The next thing we want to talk about is repurposing webinar content. So now that you've recorded this webinar, even if it was live or semi-live or on demand, regardless, you still have that piece, and you can repurpose it in many ways. So maybe it was live, but now following up, now you can make it on demand. Or what you can also do is, maybe there's nice little sound bites that you want to isolate out, and you can use those as little sound bites that you can put in a blog, or you can use them for social as little teasers.
Yep.
Those are just some examples of ways that you can cut down the webinar so it's more digestible, being maybe 30 seconds to 1 minute versus, say, 30 minutes to 60 minutes.
That's right. It goes without saying that obviously, depending on what your webinar is about, maybe a member of your sales team is speaking with somebody externally and they need help on something, and you can report back to them with a follow-up of this snippet of the webinar without, say you did a 1-hour webinar, and maybe only 10 minutes covered exactly what they needed help with. you have this piece of content that you can kind of cut out and send to them exactly, so that they're not wasting their time watching 1 hour when all they need is that 10-minute piece of advice. And then suddenly, you know, you help them in a very efficient manner, getting right to the source of the issue that they're needing a little bit of help with. So that's the beauty of those webinars, particularly in longer format stuff, is like you said, being able to break it down into little snippets and being able to pull on that from a library. It's a great tool.
So lastly, the one thing we want to share with you is there's a large list of webinar software tools out there. For sure. But we're just going to quickly touch on 3 that come top of mind when we think webinar software. And that being Zoom, On24, and GoToWebinar from the company GoToMeeting.
Yeah.
So, but like I said, there's a long list of webinar software out there, so
Try them out, see what works for you.
yeah, do your research and just figure out what fits best for you guys, and yeah. So when it comes to webinars, yeah, it's about the quality of content, not so much the production, and just think about how you want to present your information, and I guess have fun with it.
Yeah, share it with the world.
Yeah, and like I said, check out some of these tools, Zoom On24, GoToWebinar, or find something on your own.
Happy presenting.
So yeah, so that was us discussing webinars. Super meta, because it was basically us just making a webinar about webinar content.
Yeah, exactly. You're right. Yeah.
So at the end of the day, really the only thing that's standing in your way from creating webinar video content is nothing in terms of production. It's not about production quality, it's about the quality of content. So if you have knowledge that you want to share with the world, just offload it onto a slide deck. Doesn't have to be overly fancy. Or grab a peer, grab a colleague, grab a friend, a thought leader, an influencer, and have a conversation about said topic. And then just share that conversation and share it with the world, put it on a landing page, get it out there on YouTube, wherever. It's just a matter of, you know, sharing that knowledge, that wealth of knowledge that you have, and allowing your audience to learn.
That's right. As you said, you know, your content is king over the quality, so make sure you keep that the primary focus. And don't forget, particularly in those live and simulive options, consider having that time for Q&A, so that some of the things that maybe you didn't think of, you're letting your audience kind of queue up for you to be able to answer in that moment. Don't be intimidated by it. It'll go fine. You're the professional in your field, so trust in that. And I think you'll find a lot more people are satisfied with the webinar overall.
So yeah, and then also too, when you're done with it all, think about repurposing that content afterwards. Splice it up, make it shorter, make it smaller, throw it out there on the social networks, just to give it that longer shelf life.
You bet.
So yeah, see, that's everything that we could pretty much share in terms of creating webinar content. So that being said, thanks for watching. We'll catch you next time.
Thanks.